Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Ventureyra. I'm an independent scholar residing in Ottawa, Canada. Today I'll be delivering a presentation titled Artificial Intelligence, the Nature of Consciousness, Information, Reality, and the Possibility of the Afterlife. My academic background is in philosophy, theology, and economics. My PhD is in philosophical theology. My first book on the origin of consciousness provides an explanation as to how and why consciousness may have originated in our universe. In it, I integrate various domains of philosophy, theology, and science in a mutually interactive way to provide an explanation for consciousness's origin. In this presentation, I will try to demonstrate that the nature of consciousness, the nature of information, and advancements in artificial intelligence advance the dialogue on the possibility of the afterlife, even given metaphysical naturalism. I will begin this presentation by examining some key terms and providing some broad definitions of such terms. First, I will define consciousness, information, artificial intelligence, and the afterlife as they pertain to the theme of this presentation. Second, a brief exploration of how the afterlife has been understood throughout the history of the world's main religions. Third, the distinction between logical and causal possibility, and how it pertains to the possibility of the afterlife. Fourth, the concept of transhumanism as a connection between AI and human consciousness. Fifth, I will consider what role, if any, AI may play in the future of the human person with respect to the afterlife. Questions about functionalism are raised in causal possibility of downloading our brain onto computers or other such media. Curiosity is also incited as to the causal possibility of consciousness existing immaterially and its possibility through orchestrated objective reduction theory, Orch-OR. I seek to probe the possibility and the difficulties associated with such scenarios. There will be a number of different aspects to this presentation, but the purpose is to set up the question about the possibility of the afterlife given the future of the human person and AI. As 21st century humans, we find ourselves in an era of utter awe and discovery, with the rapid advancement of the natural sciences and the exponential development of technology, all of which serve as an indispensable aid to scientific, philosophical, and theological inquiry. Through this ever-evolving correspondence between our understanding of the natural sciences and technological development, it is astonishing, for instance, to observe the features of low life, such as microorganisms endowed with specified complexity, something that has been only possible because of our advancement in technology. Most remarkable is the fact that we can unravel a world far more intricate than any computer or device we have been able to design. This is especially true with the informational content embedded on the spine of the double helical DNA molecule. Indeed, our technology has allowed us to discover an exquisite world of nanotechnology that is far more sophisticated than our own, yet vastly more primitive. For example, even primordial single-celled organisms such as eukaryotes and prokaryotes, bacteria, exhibiting much lower orders of specified complexity and obvious cognitive capacities than humans possess. Such advancements provoke us to reflect deeply on our philosophical and theological outlooks. The success of the modern sciences has raised a series of intriguing questions revolving around a string of variant phenomena. The universe itself, the physical laws that govern the universe, the information necessary for the existence of the first cell, and consciousness, particularly as related to the human mind. The intelligibility of the cosmos and our advancement in the natural sciences, with corresponding technological advancement, presupposes an inherent rational order and structure to reality. It is not a requirement of existence that our minds correspond with how reality actually is, and that we are able to gain understanding of it with our various theological, philosophical, and scientific instruments. These rational endeavors would be impossible without our level of consciousness. Yet this is the intriguing state we find ourselves in. The concept of self-consciousness, that is, the introspective ability of being aware of oneself as experienced by embodied persons. Self-consciousness entails a recognition of individuation, namely, that one as an individual being is separate and distinct from other beings and the surrounding physical environment. Other understandings of consciousness, such as intentionality and phenomenal experience, are also important as they are not so neatly disentangled from introspection nor from one another. Intentionality refers to particular mental states, including thoughts, beliefs, desires, and hopes, which are aimed at some object or state of affairs. Phenomenal experience involves what is known as qualia, which are understood as phenomenal properties of experience, such as a specific sort of intrinsically characterized mental state, such as seeing red, having a sour taste, smelling roses, hearing music, and feeling pain. The science of consciousness is a developing enterprise, but it is still in its speculative stages, since consciousness is not observable through conventional scientific empirical means. In my estimation, the unifying principle between life, consciousness, artificial intelligence, and reality in general is information. The fundamental question is, what do we mean by information in this context? Leading philosopher of mind David Chalmers has shared a similar sentiment in The Conscious Mind, when he stated, "I do not have any knockdown arguments to prove that information is the key to the link between physical processes and conscious experience, but there are some indirect ways of giving support to this idea." To be sure, there are many qualitative and quantitative theories of information. Qualitative ones would include semantic information and information as a state of an agent. Quantitative ones would include Nyquist function, Fisher information, the Hartley function, Shannon information, Kolmogorov complexity, entropy measures in physics, and quantum information. Although Chalmers seems to now support panpsychism, his dual aspect view of information, that is, a physical and phenomenal aspect, does not depend on it. He himself has been explicitly clear about this. Nevertheless, the question remains, why should we agree with Chalmers? Close to 25 years later, we are still searching for this clue to reality. Are there some more direct ways available to us now? Which understanding of information? Even though I do not want to immerse myself into the complex debates involving qualitative and quantitative theories of information, the concept of functional information or functional organization will suffice for our purposes. Chalmers offers an interesting understanding of functionalism, which he labels non-reductive functionalism. This understanding is indicative of a certain level of functional organization that corresponds with the same type of conscious experience. What is essential is the existence of certain parts and the dependent relations between their states. In other words, a system or organism's level of functional and integrated complexity is manifested through their conscious abilities and experience. There is a deep correlation between complexity and consciousness. This is the basic premise of cosmic evolution and universal common descent, even if we do not understand or know the causal or conceptual connection between the two. AI is a science of computers emulating human thinking. In other words, a reference to the simulation of human intelligence in machines. It is also strongly associated to machine learning, which refers to a method of how machines learn from large sets of data and an ability to discern patterns to accomplish certain tasks. At its core, machines are endowed with autonomous behavior. These machines are programmed to think like humans and even mimic their actions. It is not merely a new type of technology, it is literally a new approach to computerization and digitization which affect many areas of human life and our understanding of reality, including the afterlife. as we shall explore. This is where we can ultimately put to the test the concept of non-reductive functionalism. Non-reductive functionalism could be the informational link or glue between human consciousness and artificial intelligence with respect to a high degree of self-awareness. This is found through human persons who can introspect deeply on themselves, other minds, and the external physical world. Since the science of consciousness should explain the precise relationship between subjective mental states and brain states, this is where the work of psychologist Philip Rochat is of extreme interest. Can we measure self-consciousness among humans? Rochat outlines 6 different levels of self-awareness and how they unfold through the use of recognizing one's self through a mirror, including level 0, confusion. This is a level of no self-awareness. They are unaware of the mirror reflection or the mirror itself. Level 1, differentiation. When looking into a mirror, they realize the mirror reflects things and they can distinguish between their own movement as seen through the mirror and the surrounding environment. Level 2, situation. They can make the connection between movements in a mirror with their own body. What is portrayed in the mirror is linked to the self. Level 3, identification. They recognize that they can see themselves in the mirror and that it isn't somebody or something else. Level 4, permanence. A permanent self is experienced beyond mirror imagery. Level 5, self-consciousness or meta self-awareness. At this stage, they not only recognize themselves, but recognize that others recognize them. One conceivable option would be to measure the informational content of the brain of an infant or toddler at the brink of becoming self-conscious through all of Rochat's levels. Another way of measuring self-consciousness may arise through measuring the substratum of information embedded for artificial intelligence purposes, whether robotic or computerized in some way. Emulating the results found from the informational content of human brains could be transposed to digital ones, at least in principle if functionalism is true. Thus, if we could measure the informational content of conscious states in this way, then it would vindicate a sort of functionalism. The afterlife simply refers to the continued existence of a being after death of the physical body. It could be summed up through the words of philosopher and psychiatrist Raymond Moody. Life after life, that is, the conscious experience of an individual continuing beyond physical existence. Classically, the possibility of the survival of the human person after death was solely logically tenable given a dualist perspective. That is, that there is a continuance in the existence of the immaterial aspect of the person, while the physical aspect ceases to exist as we know it. In other words, a point of disembodiment. Materialist accounts have a series of obstacles even if found within a theistic framework, like in the work of Peter van Inwagen, since God can allow for this causal possibility. Whereas under a naturalist worldview, it does not seem like a plausible possibility. The world's great religions have long maintained the reality of the afterlife. The monotheistic faiths such as Judaism, within some divisions, Christianity and Islam ascribe to the belief in a future resurrected state. However, South Asian religions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and Sikhism believe in reincarnation, and more paganistic beliefs, whether ancient Roman, Greek, or New Age, maintain a belief in some sort of conscious state after death. Virtually all belief systems adhere to the existence of the afterlife. However, typically naturalistic, they claim that nature is all that exists, no God, no soul, etc., or quasi-naturalistic views such as deism preclude the possibility of the afterlife. But is such the case anymore? Leaving aside the alleged evidence for the afterlife, such as near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, and the historical evidence for the resurrection of Christ, etc., what do recent developments in AI suggest about such a possibility? New developments in AI, the nature of consciousness, and information have dramatically shifted our understanding of the possibility of the afterlife. Surprisingly, the afterlife may not be confined to explicitly spiritually inclined world views. Many philosophers would agree that the afterlife is logically possible since the concept does not involve an inherent contradiction. However, the more interesting question is whether such a thing is causally or physically possible. Something would be causally or physically possible if it does not violate a law of nature. In turn, if something is physically possible, then it could be technologically possible even if it is at some later date. If we put aside the philosophical problems of being, first causes, debates over God's existence, the veracity of certain religious doctrines, and ethical questions regarding immortality, for the first time in human history we can acknowledge the physical possibility of the afterlife, even through metaphysical naturalism. Through our technological advancements, real conversations regarding this possibility have ensued with the concept of transhumanism. The idea of transhumanism, that is, of merging human persons with technology to create a further step in human evolutionary history, in other words, artificial intelligence with the biological, has been popularized by Jesuit priest and paleontologist Teilhard de Chardin, the mathematical physicist Frank Tipler, entrepreneur Elon Musk, and the futurologist Ray Kurzweil, with his concept of the singularity, which has predicted to occur around 2045. What could be a physically possible and plausible method of sustaining a human person's self? Some futurists have suggested that a potential way of bringing a person to immortality could be through mind uploading. It relies on the idea that the information within your neurons could be transferred to a computer, allowing you to live forever. Although mind uploading seems like the most plausible notion of preserving human consciousness, it is marred with difficulties including technological, philosophical, and theological ones. There are several technological hurdles that make the 2045 prediction incredibly unrealistic. For instance, storage may be an issue without quantum computing, but that is the least of our worries. We do not currently have the technology to scan every single neuron and synapse of a human brain in a way that would accurately represent, with precise molecular detail, one's authentic neural network. There are roughly about 1 billion synapses in every cubic millimeter, with a significant number of them coming from neurons that are far apart within the brain from one another. Currently, aside from sci-fi like imaginative scenarios, we do not have as of yet the computer power to emulate the operations of the human brain in such detail, even with quantum computing. As for philosophical problems, these would include the continuance of the hard problem of consciousness, the lack of physical environment to provide feedback for mental states, and the sense of self, that is, self-awareness. The problem of identity is an insurmountable issue. Would you be really you? And if so, who owns you, since minds are typically owned by themselves? But now selves could be owned by others. Aside from the obvious ethical dilemmas, how is this possible? Moreover, it seems that the informational content of the inner workings of the brain may not be deduced by physicalist means. For instance, how does one distinguish the exact same neurophysiological inner workings when a subject is claiming to have two very distinct thoughts suggestive of a thought's irreducibility? The question also remains, how can this be considered to be an authentic you, since a copy would merely be just that, a copy? Moreover, this would seemingly preclude free will. We would also lose the concept of individuality and personhood as it has been understood philosophically and theologically for millennia. An important quantum theory of consciousness developed by the anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff and the physicist Roger Penrose is Orch-OR, Orchestrated Objective Reduction Theory, which provides a potential avenue to unify consciousness, information, the afterlife, and AI through quantum vibrations found within protein polymers known as microtubules, which are contained inside of neurons and are understood to give rise to consciousness. These microtubules control neuronal and synaptic function while connecting self-organizational processes at the quantum level. Hameroff and Penrose have argued that consciousness can exist apart from the body through quantum information as a soul, potentially eternally existing. This theory, if developed further, and if our science of quantum information increases, may be able to circumvent or overcome some of the technological and philosophical obstacles to the afterlife given a naturalistic view. Even though for some, the hope to find a naturalistic account for the afterlife is heavily present. But futurists must overcome a series of difficulties on both technological and philosophical fronts. Only time will tell if this hope is realistic or not. Nevertheless, for the time being, debates about the reality or unreality of the afterlife will continue independently from these discoveries. And I thank you for your time, and I'll welcome some questions at this point.